All right. Hello and welcome to the May subscription tasting video. It's almost summer, and that means we are getting a lot of new coffees to our warehouse, but it also means that we are running out of a lot of coffee. But we do keep some nice coffees for our subscribers. So if you wonder what our subscription is all about, you should go to our website. Shortly, it's about subscribing to our coffee. I will pick out 3 coffees every month. You can subscribe from 1 to 6 bags. So if you subscribe to 3 bags, you get 1 of each bag. If you subscribe to 1, you get just the first bag. And if you subscribe to 6 bags, you get 2 of each. That's how it works. You can pause and stop and change and do whatever you want with the subscription as you like through our website. And every month I make these videos where we taste the coffees that we send out on the first Wednesday of the month. Bear in mind that in May we are sending out on the 8th of May, not the first Wednesday, and that's due to the banking holidays in Norway. We have a lot of holidays in May, so we had to change the week just because of that. But I assure you the wait will be well worth it. Cool, so this month I have selected 3 very, very nice coffees from a farm that is very dear to my heart. I spend almost 2 months a year on that farm because I own a farm next to it, where I don't have a house, and it's in Colombia at Finca Tamana. So my farm is Finca El Suelo. Finca Tamana belongs to Elias and his wife Bellanid Sanchez. And together they have been working there since 2011 when they bought the farm in order to improve the quality, to plant more coffee, to improve the farm and everything. And I've been working very closely with them since 2012 actually. To help them improve the quality of the coffee, the processing, the drying, the storing, change the varieties on the farm. We have built a cupping lab there. I even have a small room there for myself where I stay every time I'm there, because we do work very closely, and since I also work on my own farm, I have a nice place to stay when I'm there. Cool, so this month we are sending out 3 coffees from Finca Tamana, and some of them are quite interesting. But let's start tasting the first one. So the first coffee we're sending out to all our subscribers is the Variedad Colombia from Finca Tamana. This is a washed coffee. All these coffees are washed as normal. We normally buy 90% washed coffees. But the Variedad Colombia is kind of the staple coffee on this farm, and it's kind of the, I would say, average coffee in Colombia, because out of all the 550,000 farmers in Colombia, most of them grow 3 varieties. It's Caturron, Variedad Colombia, or Castillo. Variedad Colombia is a hybrid that is being crossed by Café, and it's a crossing between Caturra and Hybrido de Timor. And then Castillo is just a further development of the Variedad Colombia. So genetically, these varieties are very, very similar, and the qualities are also very, very similar. In my opinion, on this farm, the Variedad Colombia has been one of the best varieties and consistent varieties when it comes to quality, because it never has leaf rust. And that's why it has been bred and selected in Colombia to be resistant against leaf rust. And the Castillo is even more resistant because it's a further selection and a broader mix of seeds, so to say. And that means Elias don't have to spray these trees with fungicides, and they have green leaves all year round, and they are able to produce better quality coffee. A lot of the coffee buyers in the world prefer to buy Caturra coffees, but the problem with the Caturra on Finca Tamana is that it has had leaf rust every year since 2011. And some years worse than others, and the leaves fall off the trees, and you can see that the cherries don't really ripen very well. I've actually addressed this in an old movie. We'll try to link that below, where I walk around the farm and look at the varieties to show you the difference, because it is a big difference. So when the Caturra is good, it's really good, but it's not necessarily a lot better than the Variedad Colombia. It's, in my opinion, tasting like the best Variedad Colombias. But in most cases, it's a little bit up and down in quality. But fortunately this year, and we sent out, I think it was last month, we sent out the Caturra, and we managed to buy like 1 daily picking that was really, really good, so we sent that out to you. Okay, let's talk about the Variedad Colombia and how it tastes. So this is actually one of my favorite coffees. I drink a lot of these coffees because I spend a lot of time on the farm. This is the coffee that I normally bring. We drink a lot of it because it's so sweet and so clean. And it has a very subtle fruity flavor. And this year actually a little bit more maybe than it has had in the past. And that's mainly because we have changed the processing a little bit. It's not fermenty fruit, but it is a little bit more pronounced. So what we do now is, instead of picking the cherries, sorting them, floating them, depulping them and fermenting overnight, we actually pick the cherries, we sort and float them, and then we leave the cherries in a cherry hopper. That means just in a big tank. We leave it there overnight, and then the next morning we depulp the coffee, and then we ferment for 24 hours until the morning after again. And then we wash, we soak the coffees for another 24 hours, and then we dry. And this means that you have a little bit longer fermentation process because you ferment the cherries a little bit while they're kind of in the hopper. And then we have a 24-hour fermentation instead of what we used to do was from afternoon till next morning, so like 15, 16 hours. And that has intensified the fruit flavor a little bit in this coffee, which for me at least is a very, very positive thing. Still, because they do selective picking, we do cherry sorting, we do floating, we do shade drying and everything. The coffee is super, super clean, super sweet, and the texture is really, really kind of smooth and velvety. So that's why I really love these coffees, because they're always super nice, super clean, and especially when they have a little bit extra fruit flavor, it's just delicious. So what are the flavors that I get here? Well, it has a subtle red fruit kind of stone fruit kind of flavor, but very subtle. Very much like brown sugar or panela. If you have been to Colombia, you've tasted this caramelized sugarcane juice that is dehydrated, and it's like a block of caramelized sugar. And you can add that to water or milk. People drink that in Colombia. It tastes a little bit like that. So the closest thing we have here in Norway is like brown sugar or like syrup or something like that, molasses. And then you have this kind of velvety mouthfeel and a slight herbal aftertaste. And it's not so pronounced when you just taste this coffee isolated. But I assure you, if you taste this coffee next to, for instance, Kenya or an Ethiopian, you'll get that herbalness straight away. And that herbalness for me, it's kind of a flavor of green bell pepper or something like that. And I don't mind that. I think that's pretty nice. It adds a little bit of complexity to the coffee. Super nice. Super sweet, and I'm really happy about the quality. This is from the 2023 harvest, which means it was picked in like June, July-ish. Normally the harvest starts in April and it ends in August, and we normally don't buy the first pickings. We say to Elias that he should focus on doing the nice process in the peak of the harvest because it's easier. So this so far, and I've said this every year, but every year we increase the quality slightly. But so far, for me at least, this is by far the best Variedad Colombia we've had from Finca Tamana since we started working with Elias in 2012. So that's a big statement, but I assure you that it's really, really nice. Cool. So that's the first coffee we're sending out. It's a long lecture about this coffee, but I find it to be quite interesting because you can make really nice coffees of these kind of regular coffees. But we have also been working on improving quality by changing the varieties on the farm. And that brings us to the next coffee we're sending out, the second bag. It's a Caturron variety from Colombia, from Finca Tamana as well. So planted side by side the Variedad Colombia, we have a new variety on the farm that is Caturron. And when I say new variety, we have actually genetically tested this now. And it's actually more or less the same genetics as the Variedad Colombia, but the trees look very different. The cherries are bigger, the beans are longer. The cherries taste very different. They have a very distinct smell. And also when we cup the coffee is extremely distinct and very, very different from the Variedad Colombia. So this is why we were wondering, what is this variety? And we have sent them into genetic testing. And it turns out that it's the same genetics as the Variedad Colombia and Castillo. It's either Bourbon or Caturra mixed with the Híbrido de Timor. or Catimor, which means it's a hybrid. But either it's a mutation from the Variedad Colombia, or it's something that has occurred by cross-pollination of Bourbon and Hybrido de Timor. Interestingly enough, it tastes super distinct, and I really love this coffee, but I've had some coffee buyers tasting it and they say, I can't stand it. But at least for me personally, and for Diego, my friend who helps me a lot in Colombia, the World Barista Champion of 2021, we love this coffee. We think it's amazing. It's so funny to taste. I've been trying to describe the flavor of this coffee. For me, it's like papaya fruit, but it's also extremely herbal in the finish. And that's the best way I can describe it. And then I had a cupping here with Caroline from Noma, the coffee responsible person at Noma, restaurant Noma in Copenhagen. And we cupped it together and said, it tastes like ghost pepper. It tastes like habanero pepper. And so it's really this kind of floral, herbal chili pepper. And when she said that and I tasted it, I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly the flavor that I've been looking for to describe in this coffee. But you rarely think of chili pepper when you taste coffee. But for sure, if you've tasted these kind of green, very floral chilies, it's the same. Super distinct and super nice. So this is a new kind of variety that we have planted at Finca Tamana. We're actually planting more of it because I really love it and I want to buy more of it. And I asked Elias where he got the seeds, and he said there was a farmer in Acevedo who kind of had it and called it Caturron. And that's how it kind of appeared. But so I'm not quite sure where this came from, but we call it Caturron, and we have genetically tested it. And although it's kind of more or less the same genetics as Variedad Colombia, it's also a little bit different. So quite interesting, I think, and I hope you really like that. Cool. Now the third coffee is also from Finca Tamana, and it's the Bourbon variety. And this is more of a traditional variety. It used to be planted in Colombia before they changed everything to like full sun production and dwarf mutations like Caturra with 5,000 plants per hectare instead of 2,000 plants per hectare. So this is kind of the old school Colombian variety. And it's one of my favorite varieties, Bourbon, but it's also quite a difficult variety to grow because it's not leaf rust resistant as the two other ones we've tasted here. So it needs a lot more care, and also the trees are really, really tall, which means the pickers don't really like to pick the coffee, because after a few years, you have to really work for it. Nevertheless, the Bourbon tastes super nice. And I have to say that this is a mix because it's from a part of the farm where we have 3 different types of Bourbon. We have the red Bourbon, which is the traditional one. There's a few trees of yellow Bourbon, which means the cherries are yellow. And then there's also a small lot with a pink Bourbon, which turns out genetically is not Bourbon at all. It's an Ethiopian variety. So, but everyone calls it pink Bourbon for some reason. So there's a little mix here, but predominantly the red Bourbon. Yeah, let's taste it. Oh, wow. I said that the Caturron is one of my favorite coffees from the farm and also the Variedad Colombia, but the Bourbon for me has so far been the coffee with the highest scores from Finca Tamana. And yeah, you can taste that, I think. It's really winey, red fruit, quite delicate florals. Yeah, winey, I mean, kind of reminds me of the fruit you get in red wine or like really sometimes Riesling wines. They really like ripe fruit. A nice structure to it. A little bit of this kind of tea-like mouthfeel, but super nice wininess and acidity and red fruits. So I've also asked Elias to plant more Bourbon. And the Bourbon we are planting more of is definitely the pink Bourbon, which is not a Bourbon, but because it seems to be more resistant against leaf rust. And we try to avoid varieties that we have to spray a lot with fungicides. Also because we are talking about starting to work organically on this farm. So we have to kind of think ahead a little bit and see, okay, how can we make that job easier for Elias? Because if you have like a farm full of Caturra, converting it to organic will be a disaster, I think, because you will have a lot of trouble with leaf rust, at least in the first years. So you have to kind of be a little bit smart about it. Also, we have isolated these Bourbons, so we have tasted the red and the yellow and the pink isolated. And the red is really, really nice. It tastes like a traditional Bourbon, quite like heavy red fruit. The pink is a little bit more floral, and the yellow one is a little bit more herbal. So we're definitely removing the yellow one because it's also quite difficult to pick, because it's hard for the pickers to determine what is the ripe yellow color. Cool. I could talk about Finca Tamana for weeks and months. I've spent so much time there, and we've done so much stuff together in order to improve the quality. These coffees are from last year, but they still taste super, super fresh. And that's because we do control everything from drying, storage. We store in GrainPro now at the farm where it's quite cool. The milling is excellent. We do screen sorting and everything. On screen separation. We vacuum pack the coffees, and in Norway when it arrives it's normally winter, so it's stored in below 0 degrees throughout the winter. And we've actually had a cupping here in this room actually with 6 professional roasters. We had a roasting workshop with them, and we put 3 different years of Finca Tamana on the table. So coffee that was 2 years old, coffee that was 1 year old, coffee that was freshly harvested. We cupped them blind, and we couldn't tell the difference between them. That's pretty interesting. So these coffees stay fresh for a very, very long time, and mainly due to the production techniques that we have implemented with Elias. And that's, it's a lot of work, but it really pays off, I think, and you're able to taste the varieties more, and instead of like defects from improper storage or improper packaging and so on. Cool, that's a lot of information. We have some videos on YouTube from Finca Tamana. I'll link them below so you can have a look at those. It's always nice to see some ambience from the farm. And yeah, I hope that you like the coffees. If you don't subscribe to our coffees, go to our website where we have all the information you need. As I said, you can subscribe from 1 to 6 bags. You can change and stop and pause the subscription anytime you like. And I send out the coffees normally first Wednesday of the month. This month we'll send it out on the 8th, and that's just due to banking holidays. Now next month, hopefully we'll get some nice coffees in storage, but if we don't, I do have some backup. Some really, really nice coffees too, so I hope you will enjoy that video as well. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, because then you can get updates if we post other videos as well. And if you are missing some information in these videos, please comment below. And I know a lot of you like to have brewing tips and how to grind coffees and stuff. And I can say it's impossible for me to answer, because every setup is different, every grinder is different, every water is different. And that's why we try to avoid talking about grind settings in these videos, because it can also be quite misleading, I think. So that's why we don't do that, and especially for espresso, because every setup is so different. So we normally brew espresso and filter coffee quite similarly. We have brewing tutorials as well on YouTube, so check those videos out. And that's kind of the guidelines that we're still using in our environment when we brew these coffees. Cool, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time, and happy May.